Hello, Frank. How are you?
Doing all right. How you holding up, Bob?
I feel bad for the players and feel bad for the fans because I know how much everybody cares. So, but now you got to go to work and you got to be better next year than you were this year. And I think the next 3 weeks, not just for the Edmonton Oilers, but around the league, are going to be fascinating. We'll get to that in a second. At the end of the day, Frank, given who Edmonton had at their disposal, it's not an excuse. It was a factor. They didn't have Zach Hyman. He's got the most goals in the playoffs, in one single playoffs, of any active player in the NHL. It was a big loss for Edmonton, but Florida was one hell of a team. They were a wagon, ultimately, as they closed out that series, weren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's probably that recognition in talking to people in and around the team. That's what's hitting everyone like a ton of bricks, is that maybe last year it felt a little bit closer because you got to Game 7 and you're thinking, okay, it's a coin flip. We battled our way back into the series and, we've got a real opportunity to win. The way the Panthers shut them down in Games 5 and 6, it makes it feel a lot more distant. And I think in reality, it probably isn't that far away, but it leaves you with a lingering sour taste in your mouth. And I understand that. And I think when you hear Connor McDavid talk yesterday and you hear other players talk, that bitterness is what comes through. And that's the mark of true competitors. So I get the feeling, and I can tell you that in the couple days since, there's a lot of soul searching and there's a lot of sitting around throwing some ideas up against the wall and internal, structures to say, how do we get better? Yeah. How can we improve? How can we get to that level that the Florida Panthers are at? Because let's face it, here's the other part of this. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. By the way, were you in town? I wasn't sure.
No.
Okay.
I had to cancel my flight after the Game 6 loss.
Yeah. So, obviously there's been numerous conversations, not all of which I will share. The critics of the Oilers, and there's by all means fair to criticize in other markets. Do you
mean outside of Brad Marchand?
Yeah. Well, no. As in. Do you still do the Calgary podcast with Dean and Rep Warner?
I don't anymore, but I used to.
Yeah. So, one of the comments that would come from there, and it's somewhat fair, is that the Oilers, kind of lucked into, getting a generational star and then evolving as a result. And some might say it was osmosis, Leon Draisaitl as well, a third overall pick. And the Oilers had lots of cracks at top-end picks. And maybe they won a lottery in a year that you didn't want to win the lottery in or have the number one pick in 2012, but they hit the home run in 2015. But were there some misfires along the way? And look no further, Frank, than on July 1st of last year, a lot of people thought the Oilers had won the Stanley Cup. They'd signed Arvidsson and replaced basically Fogle. They gave Skinner a shot. Those guys were supposed to play in the top six. And then late in the evening, they brought back Henrique, which frankly made me a little bit nervous when I was doing the math, especially because my feelings on, having your own guys like Holloway, and Broberg, and I don't think maybe they could have ever bridged the gap on Broberg, but certainly, Holloway in the McLeod trade. I think it changed. You talked about the Oilers maybe being closer a year ago. I just think Edmonton had more of an identity that was their own a year ago. They've always been regarded as a fast, explosive team, and they had more team speed. And today, Stan Bowman talked about the fact reevaluating goaltending, or at least evaluating goaltending, and also maybe adding some youth and speed to the forwards. And I wonder whether or not there is one more thing that happened, Frank, in Florida. The Oilers skated more on off days during the Stanley Cup final than they did in either the two previous rounds against Dallas and Vegas. And I would know because I was there every day. And it is interesting that one of their best players was Nugent Hopkins, who was playing with a hand injury, but he wasn't on the ice every day. I did find that, because to me it kind of looked like the Oilers ran out of juice, and I don't think they had the same tempo and pace in their lineup. And then today, Stan talked about the fact that they'd like to add a little bit more youth, translation speed, to their forward units.
Well,
Draisaitl. Leon mentioned it yesterday, too. Floor's here, Frank. I'm going to shut up.
Let me just clarify one point, because I think what I was trying to say, if I didn't say it eloquently enough, is last year may have felt closer, but I think this team was actually better this year than they were last year.
Okay.
And I would chalk that up to Florida dictating how the series went. They were the better team. They controlled it. The time playing with a lead would indicate it. And the reason why the Oilers didn't win wasn't because they don't have a good team or they're incredibly flawed. It's just that they were the second best team in the league this year and Florida was the first. That's all.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, in the end, are they more mercenaries? Is that was the point that you were trying to make? In guys that aren't homegrown, homebred talent? Maybe, but guess what? They're all mercenaries in Florida.
No, I'm just saying they were older and not as explosive and not as fast up front. That's what I'm saying to you. They had a different type of team. Oh, and by the way, they had Hyman last year. They didn't have Hyman this year. That was.
Yeah.
It's not. Again, it's not. I'm just like. And some might say the Oilers did this to themselves. They made some.
They did.
Right. Go for it.
But I think they're in a better spot now.
Okay.
Because I think they've got an opportunity with a better defense core now.
That's true.
With Jake Wallman.
Yep.
And they've got more clarity on Stuart Skinner, where they can now feel like, instead of being a guy that was thrust into this position, that, hey, we're not entirely sure what the ceiling is on this guy. There's definitely more of a definition. And now, look, to be fair and honest, Stan Bowman has some.
Oh, your phone.
Victor Arvidsson's going to be one of them.
Sorry, Stan. So we lost you. Your phone kicked out. Did you say Stan Bowman has some decisions to make?
I said he has some things to undo from last summer.
Okay.
He has to. Victor Arvidsson's going to be one of them. They're going to have to figure out something with Evander Kane. I would think that there's a formula to just figure out both Bouchard and McDavid and set those aside and be done with it. And then go about trying to utilize what you have left to find difference makers if you can. And I think the goaltending one's going to be the hardest part because this market is more thin than it has been.
Right. Okay, well, look, let's get a elephant or two out of the room. For the 243rd time over the course of the last 4 seasons, we're going to ask Frank Seravalli, courtesy of Diamond Truck Centers, proud Canadian suppliers of semi-trucks and trailers, experience the Diamond difference today. McDavid's comments were interpreted a lot of ways, just like people interpreted his body language the night the Oilers won the lottery back in 2015. April 18th, it left an indelible impression in everybody's mind. So what are the percentages that Connor McDavid signs some kind of an extension with the Edmonton Oilers, in your opinion?
I missed the first part of the question because you cut out, but I assume you were asking what percentage chance do I see Connor McDavid re-signing with the Oilers? Was that it?
Correct.
100%. Not 99, 100.
That makes for boring radio. I have it at 100% as well.
It's what, again, let's unpack what he said. What you're hearing is the disappointment of teams that had 15 and 14 wins in the Stanley Cup playoffs. A guy who has seen and been through a lot in his time in Edmonton, and when I think he talks about banging his head against the wall, that's not necessarily an indictment of this management group. That goes back to the mistakes that have been made around him building this team since Peter Seravalli was running it. That, plus his own personal playoff run that he is grappling with, which was, for the most part, really good. But two things are true. One, had the Oilers won the Cup, Connor McDavid would not have been the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. And two, not that that's what he's after, but it speaks to what the scenario was like. And two, which is Game 6 and Game 7 last year and Game 6 this year, Connor McDavid didn't have a point. So the anger and disappointment that you hear from him is partially him flogging himself.
Yeah. Now, Judd Moldaver, you take a look at Austin. I remember when Matthews signed, he has signed, 5 and 4 year deals in Toronto or whatever it's been. He's signed 2 short, he's not gone the full 8, but good for Toronto. Mm-hmm. He's the captain of their team. He's a top 10 player in the world. Judd represents them. It would not surprise me if Brendan tried to put me on the spot. I said 4-year extension. I don't think it's a slam dunk he does 8. I do think it's a slam dunk he re-signs. Could we be looking at a shorter option just to see where the money goes in the league?
I just don't think it's going to change that much for him. So if it goes from 16 AAV to, I don't know, let's say he does a 4-year deal and it's 16 the first one and 18 or 20 in the second one, are those extra couple $1 million going to be worth it for him? I don't know, maybe. But, let's just play the numbers game. If he signs for 8 times 16, that's $128 million, making his career earnings north of $230 million, and by far and away the most ever by an NHL player in history by $75 million. I just look at Connor McDavid and think that's a guy who doesn't want to go through this again in 4 years. Because the truth of the matter is, if he signs for 8 and he decides 2, 3, or 4 years into this 8-year deal that Edmonton isn't it for him and he's losing the vision or not seeing a path to win, all he has to do is raise his hand and he's out. No one's going to bully or try and lock down the best player in the world. It's just never going to happen. All
right, very quickly, Evan Bouchard, Frank, what are you hearing? What would make the are we looking at an 8-year deal there too? And because he had a pretty good go basically until about Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. And his defense partner, Matthias Ekholm, that's the most we've seen Matthias struggle in Edmonton. Was in the final 2 games.
And maybe
go ahead.
Understandably so, given how much time he missed. It's hard to jump back in at that level and get right up to speed. That said, with Bouchard, first player in NHL history to have 23 points in back-to-back playoff runs. Paul Coffey didn't do that. Cale Makar hasn't done that.
As a defenseman.
Yep, yes. As a defenseman. Yep, none of the other defensemen have ever done that. It's going to be expensive, but I would think that if the Oilers are ripping the Band-Aid off, you might as well buy as many years as you can.
All right. Let's hit on now. You mentioned Arvidsson or Evander Kane. Did we get a precursor of things to come as to, acquisition costs? The Dallas Stars move out Mason Marchment, useful player. Didn't have a great, with all due respect to Mason, he's had some hot streaks in his career, including one incredible run in Florida a few years ago. But the Stars bought a little bit of wiggle space, and they got back a pick or two. Could you see something similar happening, as an example, if Edmonton needed to clear up some cap space?
I could, but the difference is that Mason Marchment doesn't have any baggage that comes with him. So, the cost is just more. So I think the Oilers could be honestly looking at a situation where they have to just say, hey, we're not getting much of a return at all. Not that there was a ton for Marchment,
right?
But we value the salary cap space more than anything else.
Okay.
And I think with Arvidsson, it's mutually beneficial too.
No question.
He's not going to get in their way because he wants to have a good contract year and he needs more opportunity.
Both Kane and Arvidsson are playing for contracts. I think we're all assuming the Frederick thing is fait accompli. It's going to get done. It's going to be a long-term deal, and it'd be interesting to see if he can play center. Who are the biggest names out there right now? Have you got a trade board or a free agency board that you're keeping an eye on?
both. New ones posted this week. New trade board today. JJ Peterka is number one, and there are at least 6 or 7 teams that are right in on Peterka. And I wouldn't be shocked to see a deal materialize before the draft, round one of the draft next Thursday night.
What is going on? Is Chicago moving their pick?
It's on the table. I think it's also on the table for Utah. I think if you put the right deal or the board fell a certain way for the San Jose Sharks, that they would consider doing something. Like I think more than any year that I can remember, there are more top 5, top 10 picks that are on the board that are available.
Can I ask you a question? Why would Buffalo trade Peterka coming off of 28 and 27 goal seasons?
Because he wants out.
Wow. Not good. Anything going on with Isaac Howard in Tampa Bay?
Yep, they're going their separate ways. That relationship had soured, and he is a late first-round pick that has had some clutch moments and won the Hobey Baker this year. So available, and I'm curious to see what kind of value Tampa can get for him, because generally you don't get equal value in return, particularly for one guy who 1 year from now, next August, could be a total unrestricted free agent.
Right, and so Tampa Bay would get a compensatory second-round draft pick if that was the case. You attended which prominent NCAA institution?
Penn State.
Where are they in the Gavin McKenna hunt?
The truth is, despite the online innuendo and rumor mill, Gavin McKenna spent last week in Hawaii on family vacation.
Okay.
And has not moved forward with the process. I believe this week he's going to begin taking some Zoom calls and perhaps a campus visit or two. I think Penn State is in the mix, Michigan State and Michigan as well, but I wouldn't be surprised to see someone else step up and get into that conversation as well.
Frank, awesome stuff. Love having you on the show. I can honestly say, when we spoke on Monday, I was dreaming that tonight would be the night for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Still a little bit. I'll say this: the Florida Panthers are partying it up, and they're the Panthers. Yeah. They don't care what they say and that's all good. They won. To the victors go the spoils.
Yeah, well, Bob, that's why people love you, is because you do care and you wear your heart on your sleeve. And this is an Oilers now. It's an Oilers show and property, but you are right in it.
Thanks, man. I'll slide you a 21 of these days.
Yeah.
First
well,
time.
I'll be waiting.
You'll be waiting. Yeah. There you go. That is Frank Seravalli from Daily Faceoff, one of the most plugged-in men of the business, to say the least.